waged a war in the Middle East.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This president doesn't respect the military, in any way at all.
And yet, okay, our Delta Force operators, our SEAL teams, the United States Army Special Forces, what we used to call Green Berets, it takes millions of dollars to get one of those guys through all their training.
Right.
But they're reusable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Whereas a missile isn't.
Exactly. I mean, I would, just from a sheer dollars standpoint. Now I know it takes a few $million to get them to the job site,
right,
as it were,
right,
for them to do the jobs that they have been trained to do. But a Delta Force operator, an Army Special Forces, a Navy SEAL, they have a brain that they take with them that gives them discretion. They can discriminate between a guy holding an AK-47 who intends to attack the United States and, say, a 12-year-old boy who is actually the goat herd
right,
from the village down the road.
Right.
I mean, they can discriminate where a drone can't. It takes a human brain to know,
Not to mention, there is the legality of all this. It's like Casey said earlier, it's not that he or I are against taking out ISIS, or that we're even against any of these airstrikes.
Right.
But I personally, as a citizen of the United States, would like to be sure that all of this is done by the Constitution and that it is done legally. Like Colonel Wilkerson said, if you leave the power of war, with the executive branch, we're going to stay in a perpetual state of war. Because
they tend to be, the executive branch, by its very nature, is purely political.
And imperial.
And you've got sooner or later, and I think we've seen that it's sooner, they start thinking in terms of pursuing their political goals with military muscle.
All right. Well, let me interject here with this clip I've got with Shep Smith and Jim Psaki on the legality of these airstrikes, because I want to put our State Department on record.
Please do.
Under what authority is the United States and the coalition partners acting in Syria?
Well, there's a couple authorities. One, you want to talk about domestic legal authority and international legal authority. Domestically,
how is this legal?
Well, a couple ways. One, domestically, it's under the AUMF of 2002, which allowed us to go after terrorist targets linked to Al-Qaeda.
That was a Bush document that said if it's Al Qaeda, we can go.
Yes,
but this is ISIS.
Well, to be clear, they were linked. They have been linked. They have a long history with Al Qaeda.
We used to call them the JV, though.
Well, they have a long history with Al Qaeda. We think the American people, and certainly legally, we have looked into it, and we are
the Brits
confident.
And the what about internationally?
Internationally, this is about the self-defense of Iraq, and the Iraqis, no question,
but
are
that's
threatened.
What about Syria?
Well, let me explain. They're threatened by the safe havens in Syria, by the growth of this terror cell. They've asked us to come in and help them. We are defending them, and that's the legal authority that our lawyers.
You're working under the Cheney
behind.
document.
Certainly not. We work under international law. We work under domestic law.
Sounds Cheney document.
We
to me.
always abide by the law, Shep. But
see, the French and the British aren't so sure, because here's the thing: the law is if you've been attacked, you absolutely go after it. If you believe an attack is imminent, then you can sort of preempt. It was only Cheney who said you can just go kill people because you're afraid they might kill us. And it looks like, to a lot of international observers, that's what we're doing. I'm not suggesting this. I'm telling you that's what it looks like to a lot of international observers who think what we're doing might actually be illegal.
Well, to be clear, this is a threat. I don't think anyone would question the threat.
Yeah, but it has to be imminent. It has to be imminent.
Iraq,
because there are a lot of... Wait, we're not Iraq.
We're acting in the self-defense of Iraq. They want us to help them. They've asked us to come in and help them. There's a letter that has been sent to the United Nations that is explaining the legal aspect of this, and there's no question we're going to act with legal authority, but the President is also going to defend the national interests of the United States.
It's squishy. And we all know
I would disagree with you with all due respect.
And the 2002 document from the Bush administration may not be constitutional. It's never had to stand up. It's never had to stand a constitutional challenge. And our own judge, Andrew Napolitano, has said from the very beginning he doesn't think it's constitutional. What he says doesn't really matter, except that he does pay attention to this sort of thing. And I'm not sure that it would stand constitutional muster, and I'm not sure anyone is sure about it.
Well, some of the most talented lawyers in the United States government have determined that that is constitutional and that it is the backup for our authorization.
But you understand why it is that people question it, because there's this whole, if they've attacked us, we can go get them. If we know they're about to attack us, we can stop them from attacking us. And aside from that, you really got to go get authority somewhere else, because it's just not legal under international law.
Well,
that's what the French and the British are worried about, because what the French and the British have said is, Iraq, yeah, all in. Syria, not so sure we can do that.
Well, look, I'll let the French and the British speak for themselves, and obviously they may decide to do more. I'll leave that to them. But our determination, the determination of not just the United States, but many countries, is that we have the legal authority, the international legal authority. That's one of the reasons we've acted.
You're not just the State Department.
Okay. So according to our State Department, we are acting in self-defense of Iraq, and that they have the legal authority to go into Iraq because Iraq has specifically asked the United States to intervene on their behalf. All right, they've sent a letter to the United Nations saying just that. Okay. But like Shepard Smith says, that's Iraq. What about Syria? The French, I was watching the UN today, and the French Prime Minister said, last year, we would have had the authority to go into Syria and do something when Assad was using chemical weapons against his own people. We don't have that authority now. Now, you're going to be strengthening Assad by going in and striking some of these places that the United States has hidden. The British are a little squeamish on this too. And I'm not going to say the Brits are cowardly at all. I would think they're being conscientiously cautious. And I think we could do with a little bit of caution there too, as far as Syria is concerned.
Yeah, see, lest anybody mistake it, Marty and I, we believe that there's such a thing as a justification for war.
Absolutely.
Okay. But in the wars that we have looked at in the past where the United States has engaged, in Vietnam, in Korea,
mm-hmm.
in World War II,
mm-hmm.
presidents had to take their case to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, you can make the case and say that this particular Congress that we have right now, well, number one, they took a break.
Yeah.
And went on recess. Okay. And they're not willing to go on record and either oppose or approve of what the president's doing. You could make the case for having that we've got a gutless Congress.
Mm-hmm.
But I say gutless Congress, no gutless Congress. The executive branch doesn't have the authority to take us to war.
Aha. Well, you remember the other day, I said pay attention
mm-hmm.
to the wording here.
Mm-hmm.
The president said we were under an attack was imminent by this group called the Khorasan that we're just now hearing about. But reluctant, I guess would be the word, to elaborate on what kind of attack, what kind of imminent threat, were
they going to come to the Mexican-U.S. border and throw rocks across?
See, that's what I can't. I've looked everywhere. I read an article today that our FBI director says that he's not so sure that we've even been effective in any way as far as this Khorasan group goes, that he doesn't know if the attack is going to be tomorrow or 3 weeks from now or 3 months from now, but that an attack is imminent by this group. Now, I don't know if he is providing political cover for this president, which, I wouldn't put that past anybody that this president appoints. Or, I don't know if this group is, I don't even know if they exist. We've never heard of these group. I mean,
not until we bombed them.
We exactly, until after we had bombed them, we started hearing about this group. Now, I don't want, anyone in our intelligence to give away any secrets or give away any of our tactical advantages. At the same time, though, as a citizen, I'm a little bit insulted that we're just now finding out that this group even exists, much less that they're planning an attack against us. Before Al-Qaeda struck on September the 11th, we knew who they were. We knew who Al-Qaeda was.
We knew who Osama bin Laden was.
Uh-huh.
Bill Clinton almost had him killed.
Almost. But
then decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, again, I if you have a terrorist group, I believe strongly in hitting them at their training bases.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Absolutely.
But I doubt the effectiveness of hitting them with missiles.
And striking them at night.
I don't have a problem with that, so long as it's either
I do.
Navy SEALs or Delta Force or...
I'm talking about these airstrikes.
Yeah.
Hitting these buildings that are essentially empty. Instead of, if you're going to do airstrikes, and you're wanting to get as many of these people as possible, then strike them when they're there, when they're in these buildings, when they're at these camps. That's when you want to strike them the most. Not wait until, the wee hours of the morning when nobody's home. I mean, they come back to to a blown up building, and it's like the State Department thinks that these ISIS guys are going to go, oh, well, they blew up our building. Sorry. Looks like we can't wage jihad today. It just doesn't make sense. That's why I think it would be very important for this administration to take this to the Congress. Call them back. The executive branch has that authority. Call them back from recess and say, no, guys, there's no vacation for you until we get an up or down vote on do we continue with these strikes in Syria and Iraq. Not Syria or Iraq, Syria and Iraq. So what? We've got a letter from the Prime Minister of Iraq saying, please come help us. Well, don't you think it would be a good idea for our representatives to take soundings from the people that they represent and go into the halls of Congress and cast a yay or nay vote? So what if an election is just around the corner? We're talking about the security of the United States of America. Is an election more important? Your job? That's what our representatives are saying by not voting here, is that their job is more important than our security as a nation. And that, I think, speaks volumes. So that when we go into our voting booths here in November, let's remember this. Let's remember, like, you got some Senate seats that are up for grabs here. Let's remember who doesn't want to vote.